Skibbity bibbity, greetings to all you wonderful, lovely people out there.
And what we're doing today is we're going to tackle the topic of remakes, reboots, remasters, re-releases, and revamps.
We are doing all of the REEES tonight. Every
Damn
single
right.
RE you can think of. So generally when it comes to the ideas of remasters, re-releases, remakes, reboots, etc., there is a whole lot of controversy in the sense that people don't really know what these definitions often mean, and in a lot of cases people use them interchangeably. And I think it's interesting, at least in my mind, to talk about these different kinds of, I guess, re-releases is the general term that we can use for these types of games. So let's start with the first one, which is a remake. In a lot of cases, remakes and reboots can usually go hand in hand, but in a lot of cases, a remake is usually an attempt to revitalize an old IP by updating a existing one with new graphics and pushing it out for people who either weren't able to play it when it came out or are nostalgic for it because of how much time has passed. In this case, the Demon Souls remake is the one I brought up as an example because of the fact that very little of the game has changed, and what Bluepoint's attempt at doing was essentially just updating the game for everyone who wasn't able to play it back in the old days on the PlayStation 3, and since the servers had gone down, people could also try the online again. And since the release of Dark Souls, not a lot of people had gotten to play Demon Souls because of its exclusive I can't say things today. My goodness. Its exclusivity on the PlayStation. So that would be a remake. A remaster is usually a little bit more restrictive than a remake because in the case of the Demon Souls remake, there were some changes made to it, whereas a remaster is usually just a straight up upgrade from the previous game where very little is changed artistically for the most part, and it's just an update to graphics and things of that nature. So the Dead Space remaster is the one that comes to mind for me the most, even though there were some things that were changed needlessly, and I think that that's something we could talk about when it comes to different types of REEES, whether certain changes to all of these are warranted or not, where certain graphics were changed for the remaster when they could have just been updated seamlessly. But compared to the Demon Souls remake, where a few things seem to be changed, at least in terms of its code or things of that nature, the Dead Space remaster is for the most part pretty unchanged, with the addition of a few new things that were included in the game at all, but everything that was updated is stayed largely the same with just a fresh coat of paint. And then there is reboots in the form of Resident Evil 4's reboot, and the reason it's a reboot is because since the new changes that were brought on by Resident Evil 2's reboot and the Resident Evil 3 the Nemesis one, and now with 4, the story has been changed significantly due to certain plot points being shifted around and character motivations being a little different. There's enough differences to where it is revitalizing the IP similar to a remaster or a remake, but it's going in its own direction now, which is why it's safe to call something like the Resident Evil 4 a reboot.
My take on that, I do want to say, and when it comes to the Dead Space game, that's actually a remake when it comes to it. Like, for example, you have new actors, they even say some different lines, Isaac actually talks, and it's overall a ground-up game. It's just one that's mostly faithful, that overall has its own different direction that goes for it.
The ending of the Dead Space game isn't changed at all, whereas where you get to at the end of like Resident Evil 4 is a lot different story-wise to where it was when it originally came out. So that's why we really want to call it a remake.
I'd argue at that point that'd make Dead Space a very faithful remake, just not as faithful as something like Demon Souls. That Demon Souls goes so close to the original, it almost is indistinguishable from what you'd think a remaster would be because it's that close.
Some people don't like the fact, though, in the Dead Souls.
Dead Souls.
Demon Souls.
That sounds like a good game idea. Dead Souls.
I think that is a game. But no, Demon Souls. A lot of people do complain, though, that the HUD is a little different. Small little, like, things that were charming in the original have been altered. So there's small little differences.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But Dead Souls, you're thinking of Dead Cells, not Dead Souls.
Yeah. And when it comes to Resident Evil, like I define a reboot as something like a DMC Devil May Cry, where, for example, the story is entirely new. It just features the character Dante, hack and slash, and overall a similar narrative and characters to what we got out of Devil May Cry. But overall, DMC Devil May Cry is a completely new entry that doesn't really use anything as the basis, while Resident Evil, there's significant changes that go on with it. They overall are following the beats of the original, just making changes.
Even with DMC Devil May Cry, the big fight is with Mundus, and Virgil plays a significant part within even the first DMC game, even though it's less prominent in the original versus that one. It's an even like further away kind of reboot versus like something like the newer Resident Evil games where they're far more closer, but they are definitely going in a different direction.
Yeah.
I did want to come on here and point something funny out. I do find it funny that when movies are remade, a lot of people hate it when the movie is shot for shot. Whereas when it comes to games, everyone seems to want a shot for shot remake.
I think it's because games are an interactive experience. So therefore, if like a game is trying to do a lot of things differently, then the tone and the atmosphere is going to be very different, especially with the fact that you're going to have to be the one physically performing actions and doing the legwork to get to the end of the game. And if you're coming for a certain story and a certain experience and it's not that, I can understand people getting a little bit kind of miffed about that.
Well, I mean, two things I always point to as the best examples of how to do this. For movies, Tom Savini's 1990s Night of the Living Dead remake. Took the original, changed some shit around. Basic outline is the same, but how we get there and what characters do inside that outline, completely different. And then you have the Resident Evil remake, where it's RE1, then they made the remake, and everyone likes to say that's a definitive one. I always point to those two as like the perfect examples of how to do a remake.
I actually fall in the crowd that same way. I feel that way about movies, but I also feel that way about video games personally. Because the way I see it is when a remake is that close to the original experience, a lot of people are just going to turn on and see the original version and be like, why should I play that? I could just play this modern experience that replicates it without exactly trying the original. Like, for example, there's Conquer Live and Reloaded, which I still want to play that because it still has its differences since it is made from the ground up. But overall, Conquer Live and Reloaded, I do think from what I heard, is too close to the original because overall it tries to mimic like almost every beat from that game while even keeping the same audio. And for me, that's a problem because it leaves many people being like, why should I play that original game? Which is why it's kind of a miracle that Conker's Bad Fur Day was featured in the Rare Replay instead of that one, because Live and Reloaded, many people would just say it's just basically that. Like, it gives people less reason to kind of preserve that original experience. It's why I saw in the comments section of Night Dive's remaster of The Thing, we don't want a remaster, we want a full-on remake. It's like, how about we preserve the original first? Maybe do a remake down the road, but let's preserve that original experience first, instead of just marking it out as old garbage that needs to be built from the ground up. I think there should always be some changes, like Silent Hill 2, from what I gathered, there's some changes while also mainly sticking to the original beats. Resident Evil, I'd also consider that a remake. Like, my brother loves both Resident Evil 4s. He says they're very similar while they also have key differences to separate them, which I think is important, even if those differences do separate it more than some other remakes out there. But overall, I see that as a good thing rather than something that just tries to be the entirety of that. Like, even on Xbox, like, they were showing on the Xbox store, it was talking about how you could play all 3 Dead Space games. And instead of putting the original up there with Dead Space 2 and 3, they put the remake with Dead Space 2 and 3.
I think, like, also the big thing when it comes like remakes or remasters is the fact that they generally appeal to the lowest common denominator when it comes to an audience member. And in most cases these days, people just care about something if it has really good graphics. And unless like you're super invested in early types of graphical styles, you're not going to be someone who's going to want to go back to older games, even if they're re-released, like ports and stuff. Because Night Dive just ports a lot of older games, like they did all the Turok games and stuff like that.
Well, Night Dive was also known for making the best versions of them.
Yeah, like, Night Dive doesn't just port. They throw it in their Kex engine. They basically just make the Kex engine assimilate the game. Like The Thing, ironically, since they released The Thing.
Yeah, like in The Thing, for example, they actually do some revamps within the remasters. Like, here's what Night Dive goes for when it comes to remastering the graphics and sound. They go for something that looks like how you remember it, but once you actually compare the two, you realize how significant of a difference they make. Like, I've seen some graphics comparison videos of The Thing, the original and the new one. It's night and day. Huh?
Oh, I said, yeah, they're shinier, but you're missing the big thing they did. They made it so that who's infected is randomized.
Yeah, they did do some changes, but
That
like
is excellent.
the game is like for the most part far more preserved than like what a lot of other studios do that aren't as meticulous with any reimagining or like touching of an old IP.
Yeah, like another thing they did on The Thing, Derek, is within the remaster, like there was this corpse that was originally just a random corpse laying down. In the Night Dive remaster, they switched the corpse out with a character from the movie who just randomly disappeared. Like, many people debate what actually happened to that character in the movie, but the novelization...
Not Windows, the young black guy, right?
Yeah, the novelization states the character died, and in the game, the remaster, they switched that. Night Dive is great at upgrading everything, while also sticking to the guns of what made the originals what they were, which I think is what a remaster should do. Another thing I think remasters should do is kind of, I think they should always have an option to switch from old and new graphics, which Night Dive does do. They don't have to, I don't think, because Night Dive, again, with the new graphical updates, they look like how you remember them, even though they still look significantly better when you compare them.
Yeah, Halo did an excellent job with that.
Well, they
did.
Halo 2 did. Halo CE not as much.
I hated how Halo Combat Evolved changed the characters' designs. Like, if I wanted Halo Reach Elites and Halo 3 Cortana, I'd play those.
The other thing, too, is that, like, aesthetically, the Reach assets with some of the 3 assets with, like, the new models, it did not mesh at all. Like, there were certain models I'm like, I really do like those models. They could have worked. But then they're with other models that were not set up for the rigs that they had. Like, the Elites do not fit well with the animations from CE.
They might not. I'm not sure because it's been a bit since I played Combat Evolved. But my issue is, here's how I seen it. The Combat Evolved remaster, they George Lucased it. That's what they did.
About that fucking the scene where you first encounter the flood and how it just lost all mystery.
Yeah,
that's why it's like
all the Forerunner architecture just is like really weirdly bright for some reason, and like any tone that you could glean from any of those settings is just lost because they wanted to make it look all bright.
Yeah, especially since Combat Evolved, like, there's such a focus on the flood, I think it's fair to call it an action horror game.
As well as, like, another thing, too, is when it comes to, like, remakes, remasters, reboots, and things like that, there's also, like, a big issue where, like, they'll re-record lines by getting new actors and, insert a lot of stuff that just doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, I heard about something like that.
Or, like, removing things that are considered, like, offensive for, like, modern audiences.
A remaster's job...
Robin timeline, which... Why would you remove that? That's a funny line.
Mm-hmm.
A remaster's job is to preserve the original experience. That's what a remaster is. So, when it comes to, like, a remake is something that's ground up. They can make changes. They can take away stuff. I'm fine with that, since a remake is a new game that just replicates the original experience, while a remaster, on the other hand, is made to preserve. It's why when it comes to the GTA Definitive Edition, while it's finally at the point of being the Definitive Edition, the issue I do have is some of the tracks are not there because of copyright reasons, even though Rockstar has the money where they could just get the rights again. But again, there's that lack of preservation that just kind of turns me off from playing it.
And then, like, there's also cases, too, where, like, remakes and remasters don't have a issue, like, their online components are even worse, because I know the Dark Souls remaster had issues as well with its connectivity, and as much as I do like the original Dark Souls, I never ended up picking up that version of the game because I had heard so many issues with it. And even though I really enjoyed Dark Souls, the online components were still there on the old one, and it was around the same time Dark Souls 3 had come out, and that's where most of the PvP was. So in a way, they also shot themselves in the foot by making DS1 remasters online's so trash.
Well, if you want to know something that really sucked, Star Wars Battlefront Collection.
Oh yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah,
another
they
one
fucked
too.
that up.
Dropped that one hard.
And the thing is, Aspire, that fucked up their rep, but Aspire is actually a good company. They're not on the level of Night Dive, but they have done some really good remasters. Like, from what I heard about Star Wars Bounty Hunter, they not only upscaled the graphics and sound, they also made the camera and controls actually good, while in the original, the camera and controls, as good as the overall game was, from what I heard, were bad. So it's like, they got talent, so I don't know how they fucked up Battlefront so bad.
I think they used AI. Some of the shit in there is upscaled really weird. There's an armory on one of the maps, and all the blasters on the wall are bigger than the fucking character model. I genuinely think they used AI.
Mm-hmm. I think
wouldn't be
I
surprised.
thought someone said that they did, although it may have just been the rumors I was hearing too. As well as I think another thing is that these types of experiences are really only there because like a lot of people don't have the older systems, so they make it so that it's more accessible too, which is cool, but like again leads to these issues because I haven't even bought the remaster for Battlefront because I still have Battlefront 2 on my Xbox that I can play whenever I want.
Well, the thing is, a big like I have access to the original Battlefronts on the Xbox too, but a big appeal that came from hearing about this collection is one, knowing that people that don't have those older consoles can experience the greatness of Battlefront like we do, and two, online multiplayer. I can play with my boys. Also, you had some of the DLC maps and characters. You can play as Battlefront 2 characters on Battlefront 1. But they fucked it up so bad. Did they even fix it yet?
I don't know. I
Last
literally
I
haven't
saw, they were down
followed
to one server that wasn't even full. It was like half full.
it. As well as, didn't they pull the original Battlefront 2 from Steam? Or no?
I can check.
Yeah. Because I can check too, but I wasn't sure. Because I have it for the Xbox, and that's fun, but like, now that I have like a big rig and stuff, I'm like, oh, I might want to get it just so I can play with the mods and stuff.
No, 2's still available on Steam.
Okay, that's good. Like, because then there's other cases where like they do pull the original game from a service because they want you to get the remaster.
Now, this is a question I have. Like, with many, there's many things remaster, what I believe to be remasters, such as The Last of Us and SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, that I believe that many people that are using a new engine to upgrade them. Is there a way to prove that the new engine to what we believe to be remasters is a coding for anybody who wasn't on the development team? Or
I don't
if it's
understand the
just,
question, but I assume you mean like you want to know whether or not it's all the original code from the game when they're doing the remaster.
yeah, like for example, Rehydrated. Like, I'm pretty sure that is a remaster, but it was marketed as a remake.
The thing is that like with a lot of like anything like this, you are working with a lot of the old code, but like there's still, because like you're gonna deal with new graphics, things of that nature, there's gonna be things in the code that is different explicitly because of the fact that you're introducing new elements. To answer your question, then, for the most part, yes, but that would probably be the best answer I could give.
SpongeBob was a weird thing because everything is the same 90%, just some weird camera stuff, like it doesn't zoom in on Mrs. Puff's face when she says things you're not ready to know, and I think a lot of the paintings, all the paintings were changed out to be more memes that have come about of the later seasons, and everything got a coat of neon. But it's weird, underneath all that, all the cutscenes, everything else, pretty much the same.
Yeah, like even the voice acting is the same. A lot of the animations are the same. It seems to me what they did with Rehydrated to kind of sell it as a remake was they upscaled the graphics and sound design. Like, the music and acting is undebatably the same. They're using the recordings while adding more. And the animations and how the game plays feels and look exactly the same like in the original. Like, they market it as a remake, but I believe from what I'm gathering is it's like Halo 2 Anniversary, where it's a heavily revamped remaster.
Well, they didn't include a cutscene of whatever his name was from Halo 5 talking to the Arbiter.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's also weird too, because in that sequence you have a Halo 2 inspired Arbiter talking to Locke with armor that's different from how it is in the actual game, or even in the trailers outside of that sequence, with the rest of Osiris, which have armor that doesn't match how it is in the game because they didn't know who was all going to be in Osiris at that point, with elites that also are inspired by Halo 2, but when you actually get to Halo 5, he's got the the 343 era Halo Elite design. It's all really weird, and it's like, I don't understand why they included that in the first place.
Well, question. This is something that I've actually been interested in. Like, I'm not sure how many of you know of the game Blood, but the Doom community ended up porting the assets from the game Blood, from the maps, the weapon, the audio, the music, the enemies you fight, onto the Doom engine, and I believe it's called Z Blood, because of GZ Doom. Would you consider that a remake or a remaster?
I played a lot of Blood. What exactly did they do to get in?
Essentially, what they did was they ported the assets from Blood into GZ Doom's engine. So they essentially created a Blood mod in GZ Doom.
Yeah,
like just what Night Dive does with the Kex engine.
Probably. I'd assume so.
Yeah, basically, it's on the Doom engine, yeah. And that's something that I've kind of been wondering. Like, would you guys, many people say they remade Blood in the Doom engine, but I wouldn't consider that a remake, since it's pretty much exactly the same, except a little more limited than the actual release of Blood.
I'm thinking you're experiencing it. Because I've never played any GZ. I don't know the mod too well, GZ Doom. I play games that are made off of GZ Doom, and I guess they could make it work like Blood. I don't know. Blood was on whatever Monolith was using that.
Yeah, that was the one that they did for the Duke Nukem.
I don't know how well that computes.
Well, it's the thing was like Monolith's engine was similar to the original id Tech stuff, so it's like
I gotta see how the dynamite bounces.
Yeah.
Then I'll be able to tell you if they did a good job. That's not a joke either. I need to see how the dynamite bounces.
I've heard Z Blood is overall nearly identical to the original experience because, again, it's just porting the every asset from Blood that the Doom engine could handle. So
I guess, like, what's it called? The only way you know for sure if it's a good Blood game is if the cultists sound right.
They sound the same, exactly the same.
Oh,
but one thing I will say is, like many people who played Blood for years, since it took Night Dive so long to get it, many of them played it through Z Blood because outside of that old dinosaur hardware they were using to run the game, that was one of the only ways to get access of it for so long. So would you consider Z Blood a remake or just a different engine? The same game on a different engine?
I would just call it a port job.
I just call it a port job,
it or anything. Yeah,
well, it's like one of those things. Is like, do we like consider like mods that are trying to like port over stuff, remakes, remasters, or things like that, since they aren't official?
Yeah, because I played Far Cry back when they had a map editor. You had people recreating GoldenEye levels in the map editor. It's like,
yeah, I wouldn't call it like a GoldenEye remaster or anything. I'd just say it's like a GoldenEye port or a GoldenEye homage.
Yeah, because many people are considering that a remake, which, granted, there was effort went into porting it into the engine, but you still didn't remake it. Those assets from the sound design, the controls, the enemies, and all that were made for you back in 1997. But yeah, I'd recommend looking up G-Man Live's review of it, because that should give you a good idea of Z Blood.
Well, what's it called? I do watch G-Man, so it'd just be something I'd have to look into.
Yeah.
Or like another one would be Skywind, where there's that one mod team that's trying to essentially update Morrowind, but in the Skyrim engine, but they're also doing a lot of custom assets and stuff of the game and changing a few things to immediately like make it different in its own unique thing, but like still very much in keeping with like what Morrowind was.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I've always kind of found this topic of remake and remaster to be fascinating because there is definitely a lot of meat to it because of how people use the terms interchangeably, and I do think a part of that is a lot of gaming companies' faults, as they will just release a heavily altered remaster as a remake. Like, for example, there's Rehydrated, there's Shadow of the Colossus, which Shadow of the Colossus, another game that reuses assets from the original, just upscaled, well, of course, revamping elements such as the control scheme. But again, it was sold as a remake, even though it's not really a remake.
Mhm.
It's just the original game ported to a new engine, upscaled with some revamped changes.
Yeah, the way I look at it is Shadow of the Colossus, that's a remaster. Dead Space, that's a remake, and Devil May Cry is a reboot.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
like
like
I said,
even like looking here at the Steam thing I pull up, where it's like someone wanted the difference between like a reboot, remaster, remake, all of these. One guy said reboot, revival of a series but with an altered plot and or gameplay. Prey was his example. A remake, the same game remade from scratch, so Black Mesa, then a remaster, same game but slightly different, usually with better options. Skyrim Special Edition, which I probably agree with, because we can also like going through these two. At least how this so how they describe a remaster of the game is that graphical changes are updating textures, adding models, gameplay changes, interactions between interactions like gameplay changes are there's nothing there. Same thing, storyline changes, and the design, so like UI stuff like that doesn't change. So really, for how they see it, a remaster is only graphical changes. So they say Alan Wake, Last of Us, Crysis, Dark Souls, which there are a few differences with Dark Souls, so that might not be correct there by their own metric. And then Life is Strange, and I think I only played a little bit of the Crysis remaster, and I can't really say anything to any of the other ones. They put a remake as has graphic changes, can have gameplay changes, can have story changes, and has design changes, which is why they say Demon Souls, which, yeah, I'd say that makes sense. Shadow of the Colossus, there's a few changes between the remake and the original there. Definitely Resident Evil 2, definitely Link's Awakening, and definitely for Resident Evil, Final Fantasy Remake. But then a reboot has all of these flat out. So yeah, Doom 3, Doom 2016, DMC, and Devil May Cry, both Shadow War games, both the Tomb Raiders, and XCOM. So that makes sense. Yeah. And then ports.
Ports are something I get sold as remasters sometimes, like all these PlayStation 4 remasters for PS5, like The Last of Us 2. That's not a fucking remaster, that's just a port.
I think like another thing too we can think about is whether it's more financially like suitable to do a reboot versus like a remaster, because in a lot of cases you usually see remasters being for things that were really successful and then there was no content afterwards and it kind of just stopped with like the Battlefront 2. Whereas with bigger IPs, which are like their own things that have been just games and games and games for years, they're the ones that are more likely to get reboots. So like Doom, Devil May Cry, they were all game IPs. So I think game IPs are more likely to get reboots rather than games that have like licensed games behind them.
Yeah. Oh, and Tokupunk said Demon Souls Remake is an insult to the OG game.
Like I said, a lot of people didn't like that. A lot of the character stuff was removed. Like the little kitty cat face, your HUD thing for your health bar and all that.
There was a lot of changes, but like for the most part, I'm very happy that like we got the remaster. And like I was able to play Demon Souls online again and just kind of experience a game online that I never got the opportunity to because I ran a PlayStation and I only got Dark Souls after it was like free for a little bit on Xbox.
Oh, and Tokupunk also said the rebuilds are completely different, and he's right. The rebuilds of Evangelion in a sense that like I'm not going to spoil anything for those who haven't seen them, but they're sequels. That's all I'll say. Like, watch the Evangelion stuff from Neon Genesis to the final rebuild film and you'll get your answers.
Well, they're sequels, but they're also reboots because they're telling the same story, even if it's like it's an in-continuity reboot.
Sequel/remake. Like I said, a reboot, I consider something like DMC, Devil May Cry, or Godzilla 2014. That's just a new story entirely, even if they do feature some of the same characters and things like that. He also said, Life is Strange.
You think Scream will ever do a reboot?
No. Scream is like, because Ghostface isn't a specific person, Scream has the luxury of being able to keep moving on with the time, so you can always have a new Ghostface killer for a certain age of horror.
Well,
and
yeah,
because
I'm
of the
just curious if
parody,
they're going to try and pull a new Nightmare and be like, oh my god, we're in a reboot.
nah, like Ghostface was never a single person, so they don't have the excuse to be like, you need to keep the iconic killer there, because the big thing about Ghostface was that it could be anyone. So I couldn't really see them really doing a reboot of Scream with the old characters. And I think that because of that, and since like there's never been one,
Well, no,
if they do
I'm
one,
not saying do it with the old characters. Do a reboot. But have you ever seen Nightmare on Elm Street, New Nightmare?
I have.
Yeah, fucking just do that bit where it's real life, and someone decided to reenact Scream. And again, I'm only saying it because they're running out of things to do. Because they were going to do one more. I don't think they were going to do one past that, to my knowledge. But the whole thing with the two actresses happened.
when like the other thing is like even with like reboots and stuff, or like with any of these for that matter of fact, especially when you're dealing with like a like iconic character, you're always going to run the risk of making sure that they stay on brand, because with Dead Space and Resident Evil, their characters stayed very close to how they originally were. Although in Resident Evil's case, they did like weird things with like some of the outfits for no reason other than like they wanted to. Like Jill's design in Resident Evil 3 is different to how it was in the original, whereas Isaac's looks pretty much the same.
Yeah, no one liked Resident Evil 3 remake.
Yeah, like that
did everything wrong.
Yeah, like I heard mixed things on that one, while the other Resident Evil remakes were heavily beloved.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, is that if you do one remake really good and then you do one really poorly, it will always be that its reputation will forever be soured.
Well, 3 also served as a... This is going to sound a little weird to say in this context. It was also a bit of a weird sequel to RE2 remake, because for some reason, the studio they handed it off to did not go through with all the gore. There's like gore comparisons of RE2 remake and RE3 remake, and just the gore and how you can dismember things went down a ton.
Was it a different studio that worked, like handled
I
it?
believe they handed it off to someone else on B Team or something, because yeah, it had worse gore in it. Like one was you could blast a zombie through the stomach and it'll crawl away, separate itself. Oh, they don't do that in 3 to my knowledge. It was a cool thing in 2 that happened, but a lot of the gore's been pulled back or removed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always an issue too, is when you're like handing any project off to a B team in your studio, where like that it like the team behind a remaster or remake or whatever you do is just as important as like getting everything like right in terms of a visual standpoint, where like someone on the team would be like, oh, this is cool, but what if we did this and that? And then they pitch it to their publisher, and the publisher's like, okay, you can do it. And then you have someone on the development team just casually guiding things in a different direction. And then that's when you get like a lot of Twitter drama for like stupid things.
Yeah. And Tokapunk also said, I think Demon's Souls Remake plays the same as the OG, it just didn't feel as good to play at all.
It definitely feels different because of like the frame differences. That's one thing I noticed, because I played both of them back to back when it just come out, because I was super curious. But like it's something that like you have to get used to, and I think that I do enjoy the newer one more because it's objectively smoother. Although the original one definitely has some charm.
Oh yeah, like that's a thing. Like when it comes to playing old games, a part of what makes them appealing, same way with watching older movies or older TV shows, is the limitations they have. That's why when it comes to these big remasters, I think all of them should have the graphical option to switch, because while I like to admire the new graphics and how the team built upon them to make it look modern with that fresh coat of paint and all of that, I also like to go back to seeing what it was back in when it was made. Like it's good that Night Dive, for example, adds the option for both versions, like in games like Doom, but I don't think they have to, since they're already close enough to the original art style where it's not something you'll be thinking about, but it's cool that's there. And I think every big remaster should do what Halo does and have the graphical option on. Like Halo 2 Anniversary, they remade the soundtrack, which is good, but one of the things I like when you can switch to the old soundtrack, when you switch the old graphics, you get the old soundtrack too. So you get to experience that remade soundtrack and the original by the push of a button.
The issue with that is that I do like that, but there's also a ton of hitching that comes in with that, especially like if your rig can't run it. If you try to switch over those graphics, there's a case where you can just crash your system.
I'm fine if it's done via the
over.
menu.
Yeah,
That's
via the menu is better.
You could have the N64 or the PC soundtrack. I think it's the same music, but the PC is a little less boomy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Compared to the N64. I personally prefer the N64.
I actually never had that problem when playing the Halo anniversary games on my Master Chief Collection. Like, maybe it's because I play them on console.
Cutscenes, they have a little pause when you do it.
Yeah, but it happens regardless of where you are, whether it's cutscene or gameplay.
Well, that's perfectly fine. Like, it's only natural that's going to happen due to the difference in frame rate.
I mean, like, that's fine with me. It's as long as, like, people don't get mad about that, because just doing that's a Herculean task in and of itself. But the one thing I do enjoy is the fact that in the case of the remaster for Halo 2, they definitely balance the audio differently, because there were cases where I even played missions back to back and certain lines in the original were like lower than how they are on the remaster, and then other cases remaster volume was like lower in other spots where it was more clear in the old game. So like you're still gonna have some kind of variance there.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, I'm perfectly fine with it. I don't mind that slight pause there, because it's kind of inevitable. But like, I misunderstood what you guys were originally saying. I thought you guys were saying that there was like, it can like crash your console or something.
I mean, it can, yeah. There are certain cases where like that switchover, if you can run Halo 2, but you can't run Halo 2 Anniversary, if you try to switch over graphics, it will crash your PC.
It doesn't do that on console, at least not in my experience.
Well, because your console is set up to allow it. So like it's at a level, it's got enough in its system to handle something like that, because they're built for the console.
By the way, I just wanted to bring this up. You brought up the thing as being a good one because of how they went back and they changed a lot of stuff, graphically speaking. And that was good. They took a lot of the thing creatures that they tried to make them look disgusting on the PS2, but on the the remake, remaster, whatever the fuck it's called, they look slick. They look slimy. They look like they do in the movie. I posted in the Discord chat. The above picture is Advance Wars Reboot Camp, and the bottom is the original for... Oh no, I put it in the Discord, Galactic Nerd Outpost Twitch chat, where Toku's commenting.
Also, Joey, I'm gonna have to bounce just because I have to get ready for my show coming up.
Okay.
Fun. No.
Sorry, guys.
Okay. Well, see you around, bro.
Peace, gentlemen. Have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas, bro. Hope it's a wonderful one.
You too, man.
But you finished, Derek?
No, I was just going to say that sometimes, I was going to ask, well, both of you, but now it's just you, what's your thoughts on, like, when they changed the styling? Because everyone hated Advance Wars Reboot Camp's new look and how they look plasticky. Personally, they look like the little advertising shit they use down at Kroger's or Myers. Whereas the original, it's this pixel art style. It looks really good. It's clean. It's stylized. I don't know why they went through the effort of redoing it when literally all you had to do is just upscale the GBA titles.
Yeah, I don't like when they do that with art style, unless, again, I'm given the... Like, again, while I'm critical of Halo Combat Evolved's remaster for fucking with the art style, at least you can switch between the graphics, so there's preservation there. But, again, a remaster's goal is to preserve it while throwing that fresh coat of paint on. When you change the art style and all that, you're not fucking preserving it.
Yeah, well, they call this one Reboot Camp. So it's like, it's not rebooted. It's the same story, word for word. The only thing that's completely different is the graphics. That's the only difference.
Are they using the same assets as the original, just upscaled and stuff?
Oh no, those are the two pictures there. They completely redid everything, save for the music, the story, and the writing. The original was on the Game Boy, and it was this cute little pixel war game. It plays like fucking Fire Emblem, sort of.
Okay, so it's a very faithful remake and everything, but the art style, correct?
Yeah, they went for this weird plastic toy soldier look.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that, especially since, again, I kind of don't like when remakes try to just be like the exact same thing over, as again, it kind of hurts preservation and reason to play like the original for many people.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get right down to it, also, the AI was also a problem, but I view that as more of an accident that happened. The art style was deliberate. The AI not being as aggressive and downright being idiotic, that's a different problem entirely.
Yeah. Now, another thing I would like to talk about, since Zimzilla kind of gave me this idea a while ago when I made my video, but at the time I didn't necessarily understand what a revamp was, since when I looked it up, I didn't really get a clear answer. But after playing the PlayStation port of Doom, I finally get it. And something I want to say about revamps is, the thing is, like, technically you can argue a remaster is like a subgenre of a revamp, since upscaling the graphics and such is technically revamping it for modern audiences.
Wait, can you clarify when you say PlayStation Doom? Are you referring to Doom on the PS4 or Doom on the PS1?
PS1 Doom.
Okay,
Like,
I haven't played that one. How's that one revamped? I thought it didn't have like any music or something.
Oh, yeah, so here's the thing about the PS1 Doom. But back in the day, Doom was extremely impressive. John Carmack managed to put together a powerful engine that allowed for these big demon-packed environments that allowed us to get overwhelmed, alongside being super fast-paced, giving John Romero freedom to make the type of levels he wanted. However, Doom couldn't run on most consoles properly. The SNES version, while impressive, is super laggy and not in any way ideal, and most others were also a steaming pile of shit. The PS1 version, though, not only allowed Williams Entertainment to port more of the game without nerfing it due to the PlayStation's power capabilities, they also decided to get more creative with the limitations they were put under, replacing some of the levels that were still a bit much for consoles' hardware with new ones. Having different demons show up at different times, they also included a new demon called the Nightmare Spectre, which would appear again in Doom 64. Doom 2 demons also appear on Doom 1 and Ultraviolence, and of course, the maps are more simplified, which technically was due to limitations, but I'm bringing them up because it's partially
Gojin, you're making my Doom retrospective that much fucking harder with this information.
Sorry.
Well, I wasn't aware of that. I thought it was just a fucking... Okay. I didn't know any of that shit.
Nope, it's very much like Doom 64 because it's made by the people who made Doom 64.
Ah, God.
Which technically was due to limitations, but I'm bringing them up because it's partially why they made these tighter changes. That's not to mention the new ambient lighting that gives the game a fresh new atmosphere and a brand new soundtrack that goes for its own thing. Which something I want to get out there. Many people oversimplify Bobby Prince's score by acting like it's all just badass, while this is where it went full horror. But in reality, Bobby Prince and Aubrey Hodges just had different ways of blending action horror with the soundtrack. Bobby was more about helping tell what was happening in the Slayer's mind through his journey, beginning from the aggressive, fast-paced metal in level 1 to replicate the Slayer's fresh rage, to a slower, low-key metal track that still showcases the Slayer's intent to kill, while also fast-paced enough to represent the anxiety of them coming out of the wide, dark environments you're featured in, to eventually dark halls capturing the gradual realization of what the Slayer is about to get into with the slow, dark beats. Aubrey's is always dark and slow, but that's so you can always keep on your toes and feel more like a badass once you overcome the demons that are attacking you. Then there's also a few cutscenes with some cheesy voice acting. But, of course, that's not the only one in terms of these ported revamps to consoles. Quake 2 also had a heavily revamped version for PlayStation 1. I think it also had a heavily revamped version for the N64 that a lot of people like, which is why it was featured in the Night Dive remaster.
I had something in my head I was going to bring up. I can't think of the other thing, but Doom 3 also got that treatment where the PC version and the console version are completely different. You go on some different jump scares, different paths, more slimmed down for the console version.
You also have some new encounters and stuff like that. That would also qualify as a revamp, as Aspire's Doom 3. But something that does sadden me is we don't get much revamped ports anymore. It's a good thing in the sense consoles and PC are at a similar enough level to handle the same game, and the fact players can all enjoy the same experience, but it was cool to be able to just pop in a different port of the same game to kind of satisfy that craving while also spicing it up. That's how I felt when playing Doom PS1 for the first time. And again, it's good that today consoles and PC are at a similar enough power level to handle the same thing. But that little spice up was cool. But now, honestly, I think we should kind of have something like that today. Like, I think when you look at the Nintendo Switch, revamps would be hella beneficial. Especially when you look at the awful Switch ports like Mortal Kombat 1.
I will say, speaking of Mortal Kombat, a lot of people don't know this. When MK9 was ported to the PS Vita, you had the whole game, but you also had an additional challenge tower, 150 levels of PS Vita exclusive challenges that used the PS Vita. Yeah, that's probably something else you were like talking about with it being revamped. It was honestly kind of the better way to play MK9.
Yeah, like again, I kind of miss that era of revamps. Like revamps didn't completely die because again, companies like Night Dive and Aspire do some revamping to perfect their remasters, but you don't get revamps with new games anymore, and I honestly do not know why the Switch doesn't do that, because again, even though like Doom is impressive on a Nintendo Switch, it's kind of like playing the original Doom on the Super Nintendo. Like, it's impressive, but are you really gonna want to play a Doom that way when you could play the exact same game on an Xbox, PlayStation, or PC?
I think the only way you're getting that is when developers do demakes. Like Dusk made a demake, the guy made Faith made a port where it plays more like if it was on a Nintendo 64 or something. I've seen that occasionally in the indie scene. Some developers are doing like little, essentially just quick little fun projects to demake their game or to make their game as if it was from another generation.
Yeah. Like, I've seen a lot of that. I've seen people do it with Bloodborne and stuff like that as well.
Oh yeah, the PS1 Bloodborne game. Okay, so there are like 5 versions of Far Cry 1. You have the original for PC, you have Classic. Classic is basically a port, but a lot of small stuff, a lot of numbers, a lot of stats got moved around and shit. But then you had the one for console, and well, then 360, that's the better way to play it. Far Cry Instinct's Predator, where it takes the original, proceeds to change everything, has the same outline. There's an island, there's a mad scientist, there's Jack Carver, but everything's different. He's not essentially Bruce Willis anymore. He's now he's kind of an asshole. He's kind of a prick, actually. But he gets like mutant powers and all that. And it's like, do I call this a remake or a reboot? What the fuck do I call this?
Probably a best way to call that would be like a revamp. Like, for example, there's X-Men's Wolverine. Like, many people adore that PS3 version so much. They feel it's one of the few movie licensed games that actually is superior than the film. But then there's the PlayStation 3 version, which I believe is still technically the same game, but there's a lot of changes to it because they had to water it down for the console. Though, even though they revamped it, I still hear the PS2 version is trash.
Well, okay, it wasn't just a revamp. If you ever look up Far Cry 1, you have the closest to a port of the original is Far Cry Classic. Then you have Instinct's Predator, which is a bundling of Far Cry Instincts and Far Cry Predator from the Xbox. And then you have the light gun, Far Cry Paradise Lost. And then finally, you have the film by the one and only Uwe.
Oh god, Uwe is fucking cancer.
Okay, I'll give him credit. Far Cry wasn't bad.
Well, not bad is phenomenal for him.
I enjoy Far Cry. I understand why a lot of people don't like it. It's got some pacing issues. Overall, it's a fun movie. It's actually weird because he actually stuck to what the game did.
Yeah.
Like, as close as, considering that the story's different in every entry, or port, or remake, or whatever of Far Cry 1, his slots in perfectly. It's not a Postal situation, but it's good like Postal.
Interesting.
Now, if you want to know a good revamp, did you ever play Kill Switch?
I have not. What is it? I do know what Kill Switch is, but I don't know about this topic on Kill Switch.
It was one of the first. It was technically the second or third. It was before Gears of War cover shooter game that tried doing cover shooting properly. It had a Game Boy Advance port, and I'm not lying when I say the Game Boy Advance port is actually pretty good.
Interesting.
You wouldn't think playing that game it would work on a Game Boy, but they fucking did. You take cover and everything.
Jesus. Well, again, it's crazy what they could actually do with something's hardware, because again, like, they got Nier Automata to run very well on the Nintendo Switch, and they did nothing to that other than maybe making it a little lighter for it. And Nier Automata is fucking beautiful, so I don't know how they got it to work on the Switch so well.
It's fucking magic. I mean, hell, we were talking about it earlier, but Doom, that game has been ported to literally everything under the sun.
Yeah, and Doom for its time was very powerful. Like, even the fact they got that to run on a Super Nintendo, while it ran like shit, it's still amazing they got it to run.
Yeah, I mean, okay, Prince of Persia, this is a random ass fucking one, but the OG Prince of Persia had a lot of ports. All of them were, like, very different. They had different enemies, design-wise. Gameplay-wise, completely the same. But design-wise, a lot of different shit, different coloring here, because it got pirated a lot. Doom, meanwhile, fucking gets ported to everything, and it is just straight-up Doom.
Yeah, exactly.
Baseline, it never changes. There might be new stuff added, but for the most part, you could play Doom right now on fucking anything. A child in the middle of Zimbabwean war zone number 562 could fucking find a copy of Doom.
Well, yeah, like, they literally got that to run on a pregnancy test and fucking potatoes. That is not a joke. That is not an exaggeration. They got Doom to run on those.
I love people who do that, because I always remember people who do this weird shit, because one guy managed to play Overwatch using bananas.
Yeah, it's just crazy what these talented ass people can do.
Yeah, it's literally just fucking kill switch. I was blown away as a kid, because I always wanted I wanted a console shooter on the go. But, you know, fucking that time period, that was basically non-existent. Then Kill Switch is like, yeah, we're gonna fucking do it. Yeah, we're a AA game that's been handed off to a small dev team, but yeah, we'll do it. Yeah.
That just scales the show that a lot of people, when they're in this industry, they can basically do a lot of crazy things, like stuff that me and you can't even properly put together with our minds because we don't understand it.
I'm trying, but yeah, I never took coding in my life, so trying to learn how to make a game engine is interesting.
Well, yeah, it's like when I was watching John Carmack on Joe Rogan's show. He was on about all this stuff, and I could tell he's smarter than me, but I couldn't understand half the shit he was saying.
Well, he was on Joe Rogan? I gotta watch that one.
Yeah, he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. It was quite an entertaining one.
Huh. I would say, if there's one thing I think I could do, if I can boast a little, one thing I think I could do about gaming, I think I could design a level well, but in terms of the coding, in terms of all that, zero skill. Zero fucking skill.
Yeah. I couldn't even design a level. It's one of the reasons I'm able to see what John Romero did with the original Doom and be like, man, that was incredible. Because John Carmack and Romero were both they both worked together to make Doom as good as it was, as did everyone else that was involved with it. But a thing I think Romero was very good at with Doom was his ability of telling a story through the environments.
In terms of telling environmental storytelling, yeah, the new episode of Doom, the Legacy of Rust.
Yeah.
I think that's literally their Resident Evil 1 remake. Because they have shit there that is... It's weird. It's in the same engine, I think. Yet they're doing all this new stuff that I didn't think you could do in Doom's original engine. Like when you walk through the portal into a new level, there's no melt screen, there's no flash screen, nothing. It's just a transition straight to in-gameplay.
Yeah. Tokupunk Productions said, you know your shit when you can't even make a Mario Maker level? Is he talking to you?
I don't think so. I've never made Mario Maker.
I never did either. That's all. I just needed context in that regard, because I never touched Mario Maker.
I think it's just making fun of people who like, because Mario Maker gives you all the tools to make a level. Some people make amazing levels. I fucked around with the Doom level editor in Doom 2016 and the Far Cry 4 level editor. That was what I did.
I tried to make there's many times, like, I jumped into, like, the Forge thing in Halo Infinite, and my brain just fucking fell apart, bro. Because I was like, oh yeah, I can do this, and then right when I got to the interface, I was like, I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I'll just play other people's maps.
All I know is that as much as I love Resident Evil 6 because I think it's a good roller coaster style homage to the franchise, I know that you should have something blocking aisle more than 2 fucking chairs. Leon could do all that shit in RE4, yet this motherfucker can't step over 2 chairs.
Yeah.
Okay, you talking about ports on and revamped. Do you remember, did you play Tom Clancy games back in the day?
I haven't really.
Okay, you would get, let's say, Ghost Recon Advanced Warfare, the first one. All of them would have the exact same box art. It came out for PS2, Xbox 360, PC, and some other shit. All the same box art, radically different games.
I consider that a new game.
Yeah, I kind of miss that era a little bit. I'm a little nostalgic for it, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, it had its flaws, but it was fucking cool that you could be like, oh yeah, here's the game. Oh, Grandma, thank you for giving me this on Christmas. You pop it, and you're like, oh, Grandma, thank you, but this is what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, exactly. Like, back then you had revamps like Doom PS1, which, again, Doom PS1 was still the same game at its core, just had radical differences that made it where you can kind of spice up a replay of it, which is why Doom PS1 still stood the test of time, unlike the other console ports of Doom. But then you had games like that, or, like, for example, Turok Evolution for the Game Boy Advance, which it's not the same fucking game.
Yeah, I think you're Joshua Fireseed in that one, too. I don't think you're Talset.
Probably, because they changed it entirely. It's not the same game. It's not using the same assets, not running on the same engine. I don't even think it has the same fucking story.
No, it's fucking Metal Slug with a Turok skin. It's got Turok 1 enemies, kind of, with like mercenaries and bug creatures. It doesn't have those weird lizard humanoids that are in Turok Evolution. Yeah,
exactly. Those are the Slag, by the way. I know that game by heart.
Fucking Bridge jump circuit there. Call of Duty, from Modern Warfare 4 to, I want to say, Black Ops 1 or Modern Warfare 3, whichever one was the last one, on the DS, were all real interesting. Same box art. They're 3D in the sense of, it's a environment to walk around in. It's not a 2D game. But they all serve as side stories to the consoles. It's really weird, because as they go on, too, they actually become pretty fucking good. Once you get to Modern Warfare 3, you're just playing COD on the go.
Oh, wait, they're side stories? You mean, like, they exist in the universe of the console versions?
As far as I'm aware, they're all canon, yeah. I mean, the first one literally ends on the bridge from Modern Warfare 4.
So basically, at that point, they're not a port, it's just, like, a side story.
Yes, I'm not joking, too. If you ever look up the gameplay, it's genuinely impressive what they got away with. Okay, well, I'll get going so you can wrap up here. I don't know if you have any sort of closing thing to do or not.
Well, I actually do. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and thank you for joining, Wrath. Hoping to have you on in the future.
Oh, you can just call me Derek. I just put my Twitter handle.
Okay.
No, PSN handle? I don't know what the fuck this is. It's Spoopy Wraith. I don't know.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on. You got a cool fucking voice, by the way.
Oh, okay. People say that. I'm gonna hit you with some facts. I got no fucking clue why people say that to me. I think my voice is the most robotic sounding shit. And yet I keep getting told this.
But thank you for coming on. Looking to have you on in the future. Maybe we can do another one of these down the road if you have anything.
Yeah, sure. Just add me. I'm happy to come on and talk about. I mean, I've never even seen Godzilla -1, and I was here for that.
Yeah, you should see -1. That's an incredible fucking movie.
I want to. It's on the list. I gotta see if 1, 2, 3 has it in Japanese or not, because it's gonna feel weird watching that dubbed.
Yeah, I don't watch anything dubbed. Dubbed is gay.
It's okay if it's animated, like Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust. I like the dub voices. Goblin Slayer. Actually, fun fact: the dude who voices Goblin Slayer is the guy who did the motion work for
the Doom Slayer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like to think, this is some alternate like Doom mod or something, where they set in a fantasy land.
I could see that. Like, I heard about that when it was new, and it was really fucking interesting, especially since like Doom, many people were comparing the Goblin Slayer to the Doom Slayer right when it first came, and it turns out the Doom Slayer plays them in the dub.
He does a good job. I know some people say, oh, the Japanese one has a bit more reserved anger. I don't know. I bought both of them. I think both are very good. I mean, isn't Metal Gear Solid also kind of a dub? Since
No.
It's a Japanese game?
Okay, before we head out, I can actually give some information on this topic. While stuff like Metal Gear Solid, Evil Within, Silent Hill, and all that are Japanese, like, those American actors are in the Japanese studios, like, Kojima and all of them are making those games with English in mind. Some of them have, like, an option to play in Japanese, but the game at its core was made to be played in English. Like, even in Evil Within's case, you can see, like, some of the actors doing the motion capture, like with Shinji Mikami, when he made that game. So it's like, yeah, believe it or not, those weren't dubbed. Like, they have some of them, like Bayonetta, for example, have an option to play them in Japanese. But, again, they were made with English in mind, and for most Japanese people to just, play the game in English.
Ah, okay.
Like Jakku in my Discord server, he told me his copy of Resident Evil for the Saturn, he's in Japan by the way, it's set to English by default. But yeah, okay. Just wanted to kind of get some trivia there. But that said, check out Derek's channel. I believe you have a Twitch, correct?
No, well I do, but I don't use it. I have a YouTube and a Rumble. I'll type it out in there.
Okay. Feel free to promote anything that you want to promote. By the way, it's that time of the podcast.
Fucking, I don't know. Does Twitch allow links?
I don't know. Well, you can post it in the comments section on the YouTube version. That'll be out if you want.
Oh, okay.
I'll be doing an edited version for YouTube. Because that's the whole reason I do some of these streams on Twitch, is just so I could cut out the dead air and also have some more stuff going on with editing, like with the video clips and such.
Well, we were mentioning Turok, so I thought it'd be rather fitting. Christmas, I'm hoping to have it out. I'm reviewing Turok 1, and I plan to go through the entire Turok series, hopefully Rage Wars. I don't know if Night Dive's going to remaster that or not. I hope they do. I hear it sucks, but come on, Night Dive, do the whole series.
Agreed. I want Evolution really fucking badly. They could make the ideal version of Turok Evolution.
Okay, let me ask you this before you go. Turok 08. It was supposed to get a sequel. I'm only discovering this recently. I actually didn't know this until yesterday. I'm looking into it to see what it was. Did you like Turok 08 or no? Absolutely no. Dead in the water.
That and Rage Wars are the only Turok games I have not played, but it's on my list, though when I've seen reviews of it, yeah, it does not look great, honestly.
What'd you think of it? 08 was... I liked 08. If you're going in expecting Lost Land adventure, no. But I mean, when you look at all of Turok's always kind of been changed. I mean, he started out in the fucking Lone Ranger comics. And it was originally just sort of a pulpy Native American in a valley in Mexico dealing with dinosaurs. Then Valiant rebooted him, threw in the sci-fi elements. This one here, 08 is its own thing. It has more in common with Bulletstorm, weirdly. If you ever played Bulletstorm, the stories are very similar.
I have played Bulletstorm, yeah, and now that you mention it, when it comes to the gunplay, from what I could see, yeah, it's definitely similar, but yeah, Bulletstorm, you could say, I guess you could say that represents a lot of the FPS games that were going on in the 360 era.
Well, I'll give it two things. One, some people like to point out that these remakes and all that, these reboots, hate the original. 08 doesn't do that. They go so far as to drop that Turok is, I believe, Kiowa. And in the comics, the original, like Valiant comics, he was Kiowa. But also, all the mercenaries you see on the ship at the start, none of them are generic faces. They never have the Carmine Gears of War effect. They're all actually designed characters, and they're all there from the start of the game to the end of the game. It's the same group that gets picked off as the story goes on. So you can actually keep track of who's alive, even if they don't have a speaking part their character was designed.
Yeah, I plan to play it myself, and I would really love if Night Dive would remaster it. Hell, Night Dive would probably fix any flaws that the game does have, because they're known for that.
Yeah, one flaw that they won't was they brought Bruce Willis on for your one of your comrades. Bruce Willis is not a good voice actor. I can't think of one he's been in that he's good. He's a good actor, but voice acting has never been his strong suit.
Yeah, like I heard about a game that had him in it, and I saw his performance. Like, I don't know what it is about voice acting, but it's just not something he could do from what I can tell.
Not to be mean to him, given his current situation, but I believe it's the apple question. Can you picture an apple in your head? Can you spin it around? I think some people have trouble with that, and a lot of voice acting is you gotta imagine you're in that. Whereas in acting, even in acting, for CGI work, they'll have like a tennis ball on a stick for you to focus on. Whereas when they throw you in a voice acting booth, it's kind of just you. Nowadays it's a little different because, like for The Last of Us, they had props for the actor to interact with. But back then, when that game was made, I don't know if they actually did.
That makes sense.
Simple, he had trouble getting into the spot.
Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, that was it for this episode. I got a few videos I'm working on myself. Like, I'm planning a review of the anime series Uzumaki. Yeah, and I've also got an edited version coming from the other podcast. If you guys are watching the edited version of this, subscribe to me on Twitch, as there you can see some podcasts while they're live. Now, of course, again, I want to make this clear. I'll still be doing a lot of podcasts live on YouTube. Just, I want to also kind of make something like... I also want to kind of start using the Twitch account and bring some more special things in with the Galactic Nerd Outpost. But anyway...
If I could hit you with something, Rumble, now I'm going to try it out myself to see if they fix it, because originally, what you do here might work. There's a thing on Rumble called Rumble Studio. It is Restream, but it puts the strain on them, as far as I'm aware. So if you wanted to maybe try that out, you gotta, I think the studio is open for everyone now, but if you want to try that, it allows you to restream to Twitch, YouTube, Rumble. Unlike Streamlabs where you gotta pay money, it's free.
I actually wanted to do Rumble, was subscribed to stream on Rumble at one point, but I needed a specific amount of subscribers in order to stream there.
No more. They got rid of that.
Okay, good. So maybe next podcast will be on Rumble. But yeah, that was it for this episode. This is Gojin the Makai Phantom, leaving the building.
Bye.